when I first arrived in New York City for my 3-year stint as an acting associate minister here, Galen described this as kind of a postdoc. And I think that he was right. I was an ordained minister, and I had served a few small congregations part-time. But here was where I was actually going to start my ministry. It was intimidating. This big New York congregation after suburban Illinois. I was a young nobody in the house of all these famous ministers, including Henry Whitney Bellows and Forest Church. But Galen believed in me. He believed that I belonged here, and he helped me believe that I belonged here. And his steady mentorship kept me steady. And he talked with me in those early days about the ins and outs of this particular congregation. And in so doing, he taught me how to attune to a congregation in general. And this was a precious lesson that I carried with me into my next ministry. Galen always coached me with a light hand, showing a lot of trust as he allowed me to develop my own voice. He gave me challenges and opportunities, allowed me to start new programs here. I remember that he asked me to preach the Sunday after Forrest died, and that felt like an important moment. He was always available to talk through ideas and difficulties, but he always gave me a lot of space to grow as a minister. But the thing that I will remember with the most gratitude was the compassion with which Galen treated me when, in the summer after my first year here, I gave birth to not one, but 2 babies. If you've had twins, or you know people who have, you'll know that the first year or 2 can feel like a continuous hurricane in the household. Sleep, meals, and sanity are very hard to come by. It can be joyful, beautiful, but it's not very compatible with a demanding ministry career. Galen gave me grace and slack and time and more time, long past whatever American culture dictates a maternity leave is supposed to be. In so doing, he allowed me to continue my career as a UU minister while also being the mother that I wanted to be to my children. With most other supervisors, in most other situations, one or the other would have had to give. Babies and families don't grow on a mechanized timeline, but rather at their own organic, fluid timetable. Galen understood this, and he treated me and my family with the humanity and patience that I wish every family in the world could receive. He modeled what I think of as a feminist style of management. And he modeled what it means to actually live out the values that you preach. Thank you, Galen, for your trust in me, for your support and guidance, and for showing compassionate leadership in this world that needs it so badly.
It's a rare gift to encounter someone whose wisdom, guidance, and compassion deeply shape your life. Today, we gather in gratitude and celebration of Galen, a minister, mentor, and friend whose leadership has profoundly impacted All Souls, countless lives beyond these walls. And I'm honored to share how, Galen, you have inspired and supported me. I first met Galen Gingrich here at All Souls over 25 years ago. I was new to New York City, seeking community. All Souls quickly became my church home as I became involved with the young adult ministry. Not so long after, Galen and Forrest invited me to join the church staff as Director of Newcomer Services. In that role, I welcomed people with warmth and offered a clear pathway to belonging. Working alongside Galen was a masterclass in balancing administrative leadership with pastoral care. From those early years, back in 2001 especially, I vividly remember Galen's enthusiasm in creating the All Souls at Sundown series. His deep love of jazz, poetry, and black turtlenecks brought joy. But what I remember most was his respect for my contributions, asking my opinion on selections and the service flow. His trust in my voice was humbling and empowering, sparking the stirrings of my own call to ministry. He also modeled a leadership style that nurtures potential and possibility. Over the years, Galen has been a source of wisdom and encouragement, especially during times of discernment and transition. Whether writing a letter of recommendation or offering a gentle nudge towards new growth and possibility, he has been there. 2 years ago, over coffee, I told Galen I wasn't planning to pursue further education. I had a Master of Divinity, and I had my dream job as Director of Spiritual Care at Mount Sinai, overseeing a dynamic interfaith team of chaplains. My plate felt full. But Galen, true to form, planted a seed that took root. He affirmed my strengths, blending operations, finance, and workflow with love, compassion, and vibrancy. Within weeks of that conversation, I enrolled in an MBA program, from which now I'll graduate in the spring with one more degree. Beyond Galen's public ministry, his devotion to his family has been a quiet and powerful witness. I remember years ago, Galen in the All Souls office carrying Zoe's violin, rushing off to his daughter's lesson, an image of a father who knew that parenting was as sacred a vocation as congregational ministry. He offered a glimpse of what it means to hold one's family with the same care and intentionality as one's work. Galen's partnership with Holly is another testament to his wisdom. Holly is just amazing, and Galen and you, Holly, have been friends and mentors to me, my daughter Dorothy, my husband David, modeling the beauty and challenges of navigating life together. And Holly, as we celebrate Galen today, we are surely celebrating you as well. And Galen nods his head, yes, then more testament to his wisdom there. Gratitude as a spiritual practice, a teaching Galen has returned to again and again, one that has become central to me as a Unitarian Universalist. And so today I hold deep gratitude, Galen, for your leadership, your mentorship, your friendship. Your ministry has been a blessing to this community and to me personally. During my ordination here on this chancel, you extended the right hand of fellowship to me. And you have lived up to that promise ever since, and it is a bond I know we will always share. As you enter this new season, may it be filled with peace, with joy, adventure. Thank you, Galen, for your wisdom, your vision, your courage, your compassion from the bottom of my heart. I love you, and thank you.
I distinctly remember the first time I heard Galen's name. It was 2011 in the fall. I was finishing my doctorate that year at Harvard Divinity School, but seriously considering a pivot to becoming a Unitarian Universalist minister. To help me discern, I had coffee with the Reverend John Burens, one-time minister here, who was then teaching a class to UU students. After explaining my dual interests in both ministry and scholarship, John exclaimed, "Oh, you need to meet Galen Gingrich." My conversation with Galen began soon after that. I say conversation singular because talking with Galen feels like one ongoing, multi-layered discussion of church life, current events, and theology. We have talked in New York, in Boston, and in the many different cities where General Assembly gathers. From the beginning, I felt in Galen a kindred soul. While we're both devoted to ministry in a local congregation, I feel we also share a sense that any one place reflects the larger religious questions of its moment. Being a congregational minister is not instead of wrestling with the big questions of the academy. Being a congregational minister is how and where a minister helps religion to evolve. As you likely know, Unitarian Universalism is a rather small denomination, and those of us who are both ministers and scholars is a very small group. And within that small group, the number of those trained as theologians is in the single digits. Galen is a rarity. Despite studying theology at the University of Chicago, a place renowned for its rather esoteric style, Galen's book, God Revised, is wonderfully accessible. At the time of its publication, my atheist, non-church-going partner, Bill, was questioning and adjusting to my pivot to becoming a minister. I handed him Galen's book as a way in to appreciating religious questions and language. To this day, Bill explains to people, God is not an apple. God is like beauty or truth. Bill loved the book so much, he recommended it to his financial advisor in Boston, who bought the book, loved it, and then tried to track Galen down on his next trip to Manhattan. As an author, a lecturer at Union Theological Seminary, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and as a colleague, Galen's impact on Unitarian Universalism and religion extends far beyond these walls of All Souls. I am but one voice representing an uncountable many. However, my tribute to Galen's impact would be incomplete if I did not explicitly name the importance of his commitment to nurturing women's leadership in ministry, which Anna and Amy have also testified to. Very early on, Galen counseled me on both specific skills and on leadership philosophy to help me prepare for a senior position one day. And last spring, when I was installed as the first woman since 1630, yes, to be the senior minister of the First Church in Boston, Galen preached the morning service here, walked straight to out the door and to the airport to take a shuttle to be a part of the installation service that afternoon in Boston. As Galen has taught us all, the practice of gratitude transforms our spirits. For Galen's mentorship, support, and friendship, I am profoundly grateful.
A few years ago, I was stuck on a sermon. I had too much material. Galen and I were walking, and we had only a few minutes before we would arrive at our destination. He asked how my sermon was going, and I told him I wanted to talk to him about it, but my ideas were in disarray. It would be complicated to explain. Galen said, "Try me." I spent a few minutes listing my points, the stories I wanted to tell, the poem I was considering, why the sermon was important to me. Galen took it all in. We continued to walk for a minute in silence. And after he finished computing, he said, "Introduce the first part of the story about the boy, make 3 of your 4 points about curiosity, but make them in reverse, and jettison the second point. It doesn't fit. Use just the last stanza of the poem. It's too long. And, finish with the conclusion of the story of the boy." And then he went on to explain exactly why. These sermon workshops with Galen were essential to my first few years in ministry. And they've taken place while he's on the ferry on his way to visit his parents in Washington, while he's in Tel Aviv, over lunch, at his desk. Meanwhile, I've had 10 years of carefully watching his example, which of course is about much more than preaching. Ministers are described as pastors, prophets, and preachers. And we at All Souls have had the good fortune to have a minister who is also a poet and a possibilist, although I've never heard Galen describe himself as either. In the book, the contemplative pastor, author, Presbyterian minister, and theologian Eugene Peterson defines poet. The poet is the person who uses words not primarily to convey information, but to make a relationship, to shape beauty from truth, to shape the praying imagination. Galen shapes our praying imagination. He writes his sermons to make sense of the world for himself and for us, and his writing is imbued with the verse of hundreds of poems that are alive in his mind. I once asked Galen about his private prayer practice. He told me he reads poetry. No wonder his is the lens of a poet. Galen is also a possibilist in the sense that Swedish academic Hans Rosling defines the term in his book, Factfulness. Rosling writes that a possibilist is someone who neither hopes without reason nor fears without reason, someone who constantly resists the over-dramatic worldview. Possibilists are filled with conviction and hope that further progress is possible. In my years of observing Galen's example, I've had the good fortune of participating in many applications of possibilism. In March of 2020, we as a clergy team were facing countless decisions about whether to shut down the building, how to offer Sunday worship, how to take care of our congregation. Galen led us from what could have been a quagmire of floundering into a mindset of possibility, a new horizon for our ministry. And Galen's life is a profound example of possibility. A farm boy from Delaware and Arkansas, raised in the conservative Mennonite church, not allowed to join his classmates in football in a culture obsessed with football, discouraged from pursuing music despite obvious talent, no TV, no politics, a boy with dozens of reverends in his family who knew the one thing he never wanted to do was preach. How does that boy become a leader among New York City intellectuals and faith leaders? Benefactor of one of the finest houses of worship music programs in the city. A certified level 1 CrossFit coach. And a pastor to thousands of people. Galen, you inspire us as we anticipate the next chapter of All Souls apart from one another. You've equipped us to know that we dwell in possibility. And Galen, you dwell in possibility. And your poetry will always resonate in this exquisite sanctuary.